Thank you, everyone that's joining in right at the top of the hour. We're just going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to join and then get started. All right, looks like some more people are joining in. Welcome to today's webinar. We'll get started in just another minute here. Looks like we still got some folks joining on, but thanks for taking the time today to join us for today's webinar. All right, looks like most people have joined. So let's go ahead and get started since we do have quite a few things to get through today. But thank you for joining for today's session, which is focused on workflows for managing your client's cash flow. This webinar is co-hosted by Relay, Xero, and Practice Ignition. So today on the session, just want to run through a couple of housekeeping items before we get going. So before you ask, this webinar is being recorded, so you will get the slides in the recording afterwards. We really do want to keep this conversational, have you guys involved, so really encourage you to use the Q&A and chat, and no need for social distancing on this webinar today. And tweet out as well. So if you are on Twitter, we'd love for you to kind of tweet your thoughts while you're going through this webinar, and you can do that using the hashtag #ClientCashFlow. So my name is Ryan Embry. I'm from Practice Ignition. I work on our partnerships team. So really happy to have both Yusuf West of Relay and Josh Lance joining us today. So Yusuf, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give everyone a bit of background on Relay in case they haven't heard of Relay before.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. So super excited to be here. My name is Yusuf West. I'm one of the co-founders of Relay. So we are business banking made easy. My background, previously I was at a company called HubDoc. You might have, as people often say to me, I know your name from somewhere. I've gotten a lot of email from you. So that is my claim to fame, I think, in the accounting community. So Relay is like basically just solving all the core pain points that people typically have around banking, access to data, quality of data. It's pretty sweet. So anyways, we'll talk more about that later. And Josh, handing it off to you.
Hi, I'm Josh Lance. I am the Managing Director of Lance CPA Group, a virtual and remote CPA firm that I started about 5 years ago and run with a team of 14 individuals. We do everything from outsourced accounting, tax, virtual advisory services, virtual CFO, and work primarily with craft breweries and digital agencies.
And Josh actually officially did join the Practice Ignition team too as our head of accounting. So really excited to have Josh helping us out at Practice Ignition to ultimately bring more of this content to the accounting community and really get the perspective of the practitioner who's kind of in the trenches every single day. Josh, want to give a bit more background on your team too? Like, I know you guys all are kind of virtual from day one. Maybe just a bit of background how that came to be.
Yeah, so when I started my practice, I had worked in a traditional CPA firm for a number of years. Traveled to a lot of clients, kind of worked the traditional CPA firm life. And when I started my practice, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I started my practice with the idea of being all virtual. So meeting, working with our clients virtually, using cloud-based software, as well as having a fully remote team that works with us as well, with the idea being that, I wanted to work from home. I want to be with my family. I didn't want to have to be working the 80 hours in the office, and I didn't want that for my team either. So this picture you see here is actually from a retreat. We do a couple retreats a year where we bring all of our team in together in person. We meet with each other. We kind of plan the business and go from there. But so yeah, we've built this team, 14 employees, all remote across the United States, and it's worked out really, really well for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. So we'll continue to kind of hear from Josh throughout, learn a bit more about kind of the systems and processes they have in place at Lance CPA Group. But want to hand it over to Yusuf to kind of talk about, what's going on today and how cash flow is really kind of on a lot of people's minds right now.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So, I mean, obviously, this is a very unique time period and certainly a stressful one for I guess, for everyone and to varying degrees, right? And I think like we all sorry, can you just go back?
Oops. 1 second. Sorry, I clicked something wrong.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Yep. All right, sweet. And so I think, generally in the community, we're all aware of how important cash flow is for small business. I think now it's kind of like hit a fever pitch, right? Businesses are having to close for health reasons and for, in theory, like for the betterment of society at this time. And it's created a lot of challenges. And so as much as we all have known that, cash is really the lifeblood and kind of the biggest risk for any small business and giving them that buffer, now it's like more true than ever. And so I know that, for us, like we work with small businesses every day, like being a business bank account, we talk to small business owners and are trying our best to like help them navigate, with resources or guidance or even just kind of lending an ear. And so as part of that, we've actually started doing a lot of research and a lot of kind of information has come to light around kind of the cash buffer that small business owners typically have. And so in this slide, it's actually like a pretty great piece of information from JP Morgan around what is the actual typical cash buffer that's available for small businesses. And when you consider that, I know for us, we're typically based in Toronto, even though we serve the US market, this is week 3. And when you consider that 25% of businesses have less than a 13-day cash buffer, that could be the end, right? Which is like a kind of a heartbreaking thing to think about. And Josh, like I know you work a lot with craft breweries. Like what have you seen on the ground and how is it impacting your clients?
Yeah, it's a really a stressful time for them, for a lot of reasons. One, most of them have some tap rooms that they can't open, and that's how they got a lot of their revenue. So they have to be really creative on how they find new sources of revenue, whether they are delivering beer door to door, doing some to-go sales and curbside pickup. But for a lot of them, they've had to make some really hard decisions about laying off staff and really cutting down costs just to survive here, because we really don't know how long this is going to last. And it could be, a number of weeks longer where they can't operate the way they normally operated. And so that requires a lot of tough decisions, a lot of forethought and planning on how do you kind of make it to the next day and make sure you have enough cash to survive. Because the moment you run out of cash, you run out of ways to get cash, then you're closing up your doors. And we really don't want that for any of our clients.
And like in this kind of new time, I guess, like what are, we can talk about the specifics, but like at a high level, like what's your firm's philosophy been as it relates to engaging with your clients?
Yeah, like right now, our big focus is really being proactive with our clients, giving them the information they need to make the best decisions possible. There's a lot of information thrown around, a lot of new information for some of the different laws and legislation that's been passed. And so there's a lot of things being thrown out there. We're trying to help them decipher it, what are the best decisions they can make for their business, figuring out the right plan of attack and working with them there. So a lot of that has to, really, kind of rest on having good financial data. So we have a really good understanding of what needs to happen, what has happened in the past, so we can make good decisions from there. Doing a lot of cash flow forecasting to kind of figure out, okay, how much cash do we need? When are we going to run out of cash? What's our buffers? And then help kind of figure out our plan from there. And then it's really a goal of making sure we can survive until things get back to normal. Because if we can do that, if we can make this period get back to normal, then we'll be in good shape going forward. And so it's really helping our clients, almost being like a therapist in some ways, of walking side by side with them and saying, okay, here's here's where you're at, here's what I think you should do. I know this is really heavy and hard, and it's hard to lay off your staff or people you love and care for, and you can't pay them anymore, and that's really tough. But let's make the right decisions, and let's do what's best for everyone, so that when you can open up again and you can bring those staff back on and be back to normal. And that's really one of the best things we can do, is just have that really proactive conversation and walk side by side with them as they go through all this.
That's awesome. I love the notion of like a financial therapist, like equally empathetic and equally good with numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging time, and like having a high quality set of books really helps. It really, really does. That point about being proactive, I 100% agree. Like we work with Live CA in Canada, and one of the first things they did as all this stuff was happening was they reached out and they said, "Hey, here are some grants or government programs that we're offering all of our clients." And it was just such a great way for them to add value in a time when every business is kind of like looking through what expenses could I save on, right? Like we went through all our SaaS stuff. Like we, of course, did all of these things just as everyone is doing, right? Thankfully, we haven't been impacted in kind of the same way as some other people, but that it's being proactive is certainly like such a great step. And when you talk about like kind of the business continuity planning, like getting through this period and getting to that next stage, like what do you find are the keys in communicating that information?
Yeah, I think the first part is making sure everyone is communicating and on the same page, making sure that they're communicating with their staff what the plan is, and making sure they actually have a plan in the first place. I think a lot of breweries or a lot of businesses right now, sometimes they're just making knee-jerk decisions based on what's going on, and that may not be the best decision here in the short term or long term. So coming up with the right plan, making sure your whole team knows the plan of what's going on. Maybe there are different thresholds as far as, well, if we go down in 20% of revenue, this is the step we're going to take. Or if this happens, then we're going to take that step. And so everyone knows ahead of time what's happening. Everyone knows ahead of time what to expect, so there's no real big surprises. And that helps also kind of, within the whole team, make everyone feel a little bit more at ease, because this is a really stressful time. It's stressful time for you as a business owner. It's a really stressful time for you as the employee of a small business, and worrying like, am I going to get laid off? Am I going to get a paycheck? Where's my money coming from? And if you can kind of, provide that communication and provide that kind of comfort to them, saying we have a plan, this is how we're going to execute the plan, here's what's going to happen, and things maybe further go south for us. I think that's really helpful. Engage your team and come up with ideas too. I mean, if you have all these people you've hired, leverage them. I mean, a lot of them will have great ideas on maybe things within their area of expertise in the business about how they can cut costs or do things differently to save cash. And I think that's a really good way to get everyone involved in this. And then really it's just lead in your team and making sure that they see you as a leader, and that they see you pulling them through this. This is not a time to kind of shrink back and hope for the best, or shrink back and hope it all blows over, but a time to be a proactive leader within your company and really make the right steps and take the right steps to get the business through this process and through this time period.
That makes tons of sense. And when you're looking at those scenario forecasts, like, if I was just starting to have those conversations with my clients, like where would you start? Would you start with, I guess it depends on the industry. Like some industries revenue have dropped, quite quickly. But for others, it might be, should they be planning a 25% drop, a 50% drop, a 75% drop, and just kind of play out those scenarios? Like how should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think, this is not the time to be super optimistic about your numbers and think, everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows here. It's what's actually going to happen here. And so run different scenarios and say, okay, well, just like you said, like if revenue drops 20%, what does this look like? How much cash are we going to need? What things do we need to do? If it drops 40%, what's the next step there? And really kind of stress test your financials, because that will really help you understand, one, what kind of cash do we need to survive this? And two, helps you kind of put things in perspective as to, okay, what things need to be cut, what things can I do to lessen the burden on us and get us through this period. Like I said, it's not really a time for being super optimistic here. It's the time to take a really realistic stance and say, let's see how bad this can go and what I need to do to keep this business operational. And sometimes it means making really hard decisions and cuts and really paring down to bare bones. Sometimes it's making tweaks here and there, or making sure you can get SBA loan financing in place that will cover those gaps. Because really the goal is to get you through this period and have cash on the other side. And if you can do that, then you're really going to be set up to stay in business.
Love it. And on the topic of SBA loans, like certainly there's a lot of information coming out. There's new information coming out every day. But being that person to like digest and make sense of the information and pass it on to your client is like, I would say, like one of the top ways that you could add value, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of different programs out there. There are programs obviously everyone's heard of with the economic disaster loans and the paycheck protection loans, but there are some other programs outside of that. So make sure you have a full sense of what you want to do. I think there's only kind of two paths that you can take here. If your plan is, hey, we have to really lay off staff, we can't keep the employee base that we had to get through this, then maybe the paycheck protection loan is not the right way to go. Maybe it's the economic disaster loan. If the plan is, say, I really want to keep everyone on board, I want to still pay my people, then maybe the paycheck protection loan is the way to go. But yeah, you have to kind of assess what your goal is and what you want to do for your people, and that helps drive some decision making. But there is so much new information coming out every day and updated guidance and things like that. So just being proactive with your clients, let them know what's going on, and let them know, hey, like this new guidance came out, that may change your decision. Let's talk about that. There are a lot of options out there right now. And I think it's really trying to make sure you give people the right decision making, not load them up with debt for the sake of this. There are some businesses that you probably, your clients aren't going to make it through it. They're probably struggling along beforehand, and this is probably going to be the thing that kills them. Now is the time to have that proactive discussion to say, hey, I don't think it's right for you to take on a bunch of loans, but I know you can't even barely pay the loans you have right now. Levering up is not going to be the right answer. And so making those decisions and helping them kind of guide there, I think is critical. But if you do decide to, move with one of these SBA products, understand what the consequences are, understand how some of this may be forgiven, what you need to pay back, factor it all in your cash flow scenario forecasting as you go out here and look at this like out, 12 months, just make sure that we're not creating further problems for ourselves down in the future. That, yeah, maybe we got through these 3 months, but now we still have a lot of problems they have to deal with as a business. Make sure we make the right decisions now that kind of keep us through and keep us alive this period of time, but also don't impair us for the long term as well.
That's perfect. Like that's so true. Like one question before we jump to the next slide. Michael Abrams has said, is this a wake up call to increase cash reserves to maybe 6 to 12 months of operating expenses?
I would say yes and no. I mean, this is kind of in some ways, a once in a lifetime event, right? That, you can plan for, but it's, not something that's going to happen on a daily basis. It is a wake up call for, I think a lot of businesses do actually have cash reserves. I think so many businesses operate in the standpoint that they're operating week to week and, barely get enough money in to fund the payroll and do all that stuff. And that's not really a great way to run a business. So I think this is definitely a wake up call for businesses to actually have cash reserves in place. And, so you get into those rainy day situations or those time periods where maybe business is slow and you still have enough cash to cover you. And you're not, trying to get loans or bring in investors or do things like that just to make the next day.
Cool. Makes sense. So really at the foundation of all of this is delivering, real-time financials, delivering cash flow visibility. And that's really the key to be able to go and be proactive, to be able to engage on SBA loans, to help your clients weather the storm, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to this next slide to talk about the traditional workflow. I love traditional workflows. There's so much room to improve. So, I think if you look at it from end to end, so we have the bank, we have the accounting software, we have the accounts payable, we have the accounts receivable. So if you're working with like a traditional bank, the issues people run into is like it's hard to access data. That could be bank feeds breaking. It could be not having like accountant or bookkeeper access. The data you actually do manage to get into the accounting system is quite poor. You have to like add a lot of context. You have to ask the client questions. You have to do Google searches. So there's a lot of administrative work and hassle. And then they're typically high fees. They're charging you to use your money. In the accounting system, if you're using like, say, a desktop-based solution, typically there's a lot of manual entry, not a lot of opportunities for automation across the board. And then on the AP side, it's, checks, paper, fax, mail, email, just, kicking it old school. I love it. And then on the other side of that is accounts receivable. Using a check to pay off invoices, you end up with like receivable days or debtor days, as my friends at PI like to say. It's all of these kind of pieces that, as you can see, are disjointed, right? They're separated, they're disconnected, and make it hard to actually like deliver those real-time financials. Yeah.
Josh, I think, kind of before we get into how this might be able to change with some different applications, how do you kind of frame this when you're going in to, say, a new client and they've got this type of setup? Kind of at what point do you start to introduce your technology solutions?
I think when we talk to a client that's in this kind of format, we definitely, in our initial sales calls and kind of diagnostic work we do with them, let them know, like, here's what we think is probably the better option, and here's the tools that we think that you should be using. In some cases, a lot of times they're not necessarily married to these systems. It's just whatever they put in place. So I went to the Office Depot and I bought this desktop software off the shelf, and that's what I'm using. I guess that's the only thing I can use. And some of it's just an education piece of not knowing other things exist or other tools exist that can do things better or differently. I think right now, in particular, with everyone having to go virtual almost overnight, I think it's a wake-up call to a lot of businesses to operate this way, that are reliant on getting checks from their customers, but they can't go to the office to go get their checks, right? Or they have to pay some bills, but those checks are in the office and they can't pay those bills, and now they're kind of freaking out what to do. I was talking with another accountant the other day who has a new client that they picked up because their accountant shut down their office and all the checks were being sent there, and like they weren't getting any of their money in. And it's like, we can't operate in this way anymore. There's got to be a better way to do it. And obviously there is, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But we definitely, we have our kind of tool stack and what we want to use and how we want to utilize it, which we'll talk through here too. But kind of like education, I think, is the biggest piece, because a lot of times our business clients don't know any different. They just think this is just the way you do it. And there are different ways to go about doing it, ways to make it more more easier to use, obviously make it, accessible cloud in a cloud-based environment. So we're not having to run to the office to print checks or deposit checks at a bank, that we can do all this stuff electronically in a much more seamless and easier way.
Look at that. Everything went green. Green means go. This is good, right? Cool. So this is more of a connected workflow. Like, when we come back to that point around delivering real-time financials and that being the basis of, helping business owners make smart decisions in good times or bad, it's really critical. And visually here, everything is it's more connected. It's not disjointed. And so starting from left to right, you have your bank account. You have a digital bank account. In a world where people don't really want to go to branches, people need to be able to deposit checks on the fly and really need to move to a virtual system. A solution like Relay is really awesome, because not only can you sign up online inside of 10 minutes, you can deposit checks, you can make payments. It's really, really easy, whether it's from your laptop or your mobile phone. And the benefits, in terms of connecting your workflow is, one, we're a bank built with user permissions, so you can actually get accountant or bookkeeper access. You actually get an enriched direct bank feed to Xero into your accounting system with high quality data. direct quote from one of our customers. It's a bookkeeper's dream. And you get no fees, no monthly fees, no minimum balances, which I know helps in these times. And all of that data helps Xero be kind of that system of record with the bank feeds coming in, delivering real-time visibility. Our bank feeds sync every 3 hours. You can sync it anytime you go into your Relay account and just hit the sync button. It's really cool, and it's API to API, so there's no web scrapers, there's no chance of it breaking. You don't have to deal with your client's bank logins. Like it's pretty sweet, as Josh can tell you. And the cool thing is with Relay, we actually integrate into Xero to pull in unpaid bills. So you can actually automate your payables, pay via ACH, wire, check, all from your Relay account, whether that's on web or mobile. And the nice thing is with HubDoc, you can actually send in all your bills and invoices to HubDoc. They'll extract the data, pass it across into Xero. And then we just vacuum up that data and make it easy to automate your payables from your bank account, which I think is what like most small business owners want to do. And then on the accounts receivable side, it's got to be important to get paid, right? Get paid by ACH and credit card. No more checks. No more waiting for the mail to arrive. You can have automated payments and really just like automatic reconciliation using Practice Ignition and Xero together. It is pretty slick. Josh, do you want to? Ryan, I just saw you pop on. Go for it.
Yeah, I think on that accounts receivable piece, if this is kind of in the notion, if you were, professional service type business, but I think ultimately just finding some way to take online payment and paying your bills online is really the point that we're trying to show here. So there might be, in terms of collecting payment, as long as you're doing that online and you're not taking checks, you're really going to help free up some time for both you and your clients. Josh, do you want to maybe talk to how you've come to use these applications yourselves, how you go about referring them to your clients and how you tell that story?
Yeah, so I mean, this is exactly my workflow as it is right here, taken from the page or our playbook. No, I think this is really helpful when we talk about implementing this with our clients, is helping them understand that having all these systems connected is important. Because now we're getting kind of a real-time flow of data between those systems, and we're not having to manually enter or go find that information and get in the bugs. That becomes really helpful. And then from just kind of a streamline a process standpoint, doing things like, let's get that bill that you get, let's get it in HubDoc, let's get that bill paid online, and we're not have to worry about cutting checks. We don't have to worry about those checks getting lost in the mail. We can kind of set up those payments how we want. It really kind of helps from a cash flow management perspective. We're not, we can kind of, take control of that on our end and make sure that, we're making the right decisions for our businesses and for our clients' businesses based on, when we want things to be paid and the timing of all that. And obviously on the accounts receivable side, that part's huge. Making sure that you get paid, get the money in automatically. You're not worrying for checks. You're not trying to chase AR down and spend your time trying to figure out who owes you money and beat them down and become a debt collector. That stuff is automatically happening all in the background, while you can just go ahead and serve your clients and do your work, and you're not have to worry about those things anymore. And particularly we talk about here with cash flow and with cash being so important, getting cash in and having it automatically posted to your bank account is much more important now than it has been in the past, where now you're trying to get that check that may be sitting in someone's office that you can't get to because everything's shut down. We need that money in now. We're not have to wait then for that check to, we get that check, we take it to the bank, we wait for that to clear a couple of days, and then we actually have our funds to work with. We have the money in our account, we see it there, and we can then have the cash we need to live in our day.
Awesome. I think we just wanted to jump forward and, sure, this is connected now, but I think we want to, this next slide here can kind of go a bit deeper on, we showed them connected, but how actually are those all connecting? You want to touch on this?
Absolutely. So obviously we've got Xero here as our centerpiece, or our, like, this kind of central ledger. You have kind of HubDoc, Practice Ignition, and Relay all connecting in to ensure that you're able to deliver that real-time financial visibility that is so critical. On the left-hand side, you've got Relay, which is your bank account. The nice thing with Relay is, as we've talked about, this direct bank feed into Xero to get your data in a high-quality fashion. It's standardized, it's enriched. It's pretty sweet. If I hadn't highlighted that before. And then we actually do pull in your unpaid bills and Payees from Xero, so you can manage them inside your Relay account. And that makes it easy to actually send payments to external third parties, whether it's via ACH, check, or wire, which is pretty cool. And then obviously we're relying on HubDoc for the bill and receipt automation. So those are docs that are going to HubDoc, data is instantly extracted, and then it's passed across into the accounting system. So you have your central records still in Xero. You have high quality data getting piped in. And not only are you able to collect and disperse funds from Practice Ignition into your bank account, which is what a lot of firms do. They hook up their PI with Relay, and it's deposits show up, and life is easy in that context. And with PI integration with Xero, you can create and reconcile invoices. I know there was just a question that came in. Someone asked, is Relay a bank or just a way to speak with the bank? So Relay is a bank. We do get this question often where they're like, hey, I wish Relay was connected to all the different banks, but we are the bank account, and we can talk about best practices around how do you convince someone to switch bank accounts, or how do you approach it. Certainly a question we get a lot and have a lot of experience in, and have seen a lot of firms become successful making that change. Yeah, so this is the picture. This is the dream. This is the diagram. Josh, what would you add here? What are the nuances that I'm missing?
No, I think this is right. And I think the big key here is you're seeing all this automation happening, which is we're working with our clients, that's part of the goal is we can get this stuff automated, then we're not spending our time manually doing transactions and manually pulling things in and manually doing this and manually doing that. That's frankly a big waste of time and not really a value add. We can get these things automated. That allows us to, again, have those more real-time financials, but really helps us advise. And particularly right now, when, advice is at a premium, we're not having to worry about okay, yeah, we can give you some advice. What's going in your books? And let's spend a couple of days manually coding a bunch of transactions in there. And then we can give you, the picture of what's going on. We can talk to them now and say, hey, here's everything. It's up to date. Let's talk about what's happening. Let's give you some advice about what you need to do now. And this system is set up right here, which is, like I said before, this is exactly our setup. This is what we do. This allows us to have that automation there and gives us just much better information to work with across the board.
Love it.
Nice. I see there, I can't pull it up on my end, but Yusuf or Josh, do you know if there was anything in those Q&A or chats that we wanted to touch on, or do we get to this?
I think we can get to, actually there is one that we should engage on now, and that I think the others we can push to the Q&A at the end.
Okay.
So one person said, well, I agree that ACH and credit card AR payments are great. Do many customers kind of balk at this because it takes away from their cash flow?
I guess, Josh, do you want to, Josh, you have most of your clients paying you on ACH. I guess, how do you kind of phrase it to them? And have you ever had pushback?
So no, we haven't had pushback on it. The way we kind of phrase it is, this is the process that we work in. When you work with us, this is how we work. So whether we do monthly work for you, we do a recurring auto draft on the first of every month. If we're doing a tax return, we will bill you up front and bill you at the end through Practice Ignition. And the goal with all that is, we want to streamline things on our end. And if you're going to work with us, you're going to work within our processes. And I think that's a lot of accountants, don't put that kind of here's our process. It's more of a, we'll do whatever we want, whatever you want us to do. Oh, you want to pay us 90 days from now? Sure. Okay. We'll wait for that. And we'll spend all this time and money and then not get paid for it. But we found the best way to work with our clients is, kind of set up the terms at the beginning, say, this is how this is all going to work. If you have a problem with it, let us know. No one has a problem with it. They say, oh yeah, that's no problem. That sounds great. They'll give us their ACH, or in a few occasions we have the credit card information. and then we just go. And then we're not worrying about, beating down the door to get payments. They're not have to worry about, oh, it's then this month I have to go cut a check or make a payment to Josh. And, there's none of that kind of back and forth at all. It's okay, let's just set it up and then we kind of go from there. So no, we haven't had a pushback on that. You kind of have to frame it of like, here's how we work and here's our processes and here's how we do things. And we're not gonna make exceptions to that. So, and this is regards to any of our processes that we do, not just how we get paid. And our clients are totally fine that they trust us. And like, yeah, that sounds good. And it's not been an issue at all.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess we kind of want to shift gears a little bit here. So we kind of showed what that traditional workflow might look like, why, some cash flow concerns might come up in that traditional way. We kind of showed a solution. But yeah, I think kind of taking a step back, Josh, let's say someone, they've got their client base, they haven't implemented too much tech, they're not doing much advisory on, cash flow. How do you, maybe it's easier certain times of year, how do you go about identifying which clients to target and starting those conversations?
Yeah, I think the first thing you probably want to do is kind of segment all of your clients in the different industries that they're in. One, that you can kind of serve those clients very similar in those industries. But two, some industries have certain pain points at certain times that others don't. And you may want to pick those clients that have those pain points right now. So for us, we work with craft breweries, work with digital agencies. Craft breweries right now are the ones with a big pain point. And so those are the ones that we are focusing our efforts and energy on right now. I'm not saying we don't ignore other clients, but those are the ones that we're selecting here to really identify which ones to target. So you have to kind of segment out your list of clients on industry or what type of services you're doing for them right now. Is it just a tax only year-end engagement? Are you doing some monthly bookkeeping with them? That may dictate some of that. You're doing monthly bookkeeping, obviously, then you have a little bit more better information you're working with. You're obviously are in their books. That's an easier step in to do and advise more versus just getting a set of financials at the end of the year and trying to push through a tax return. So kind of pick your kind of industries, pick your type of services you're doing, and then focus in on one or two of those as where you want to kind of target and spend your efforts on. Because it's very hard. It can be very hard or daunting to look at your full client base and say, okay, I don't even know where to start here. Who needs my help? Who doesn't need my help? But once you kind of start to segment out your client base a bit more, that really can help you figure out and hone in on who you need to talk to and who you can provide these additional kind of services to.
Nice. In terms of positioning it to your clients, let's say, in the case, you were only doing the tax work with a client once a year, but, maybe when you're going and doing your analysis, you identify that they actually might be a really good candidate for, some monthly services, especially with everything going on now. Any kind of tips on how you go about positioning those services if, maybe they didn't even know if you offered them to begin with? Yeah,
so I think you kind of need to, really focus on being proactive and communicating with your clients first and foremost. If you're it's kind of that out of sight, out of mind thing. So if you figure out, hey, I have this tax client, I think they may be really, cash flow plan may be a really good idea for them. You need to kind of, be in front of them in multiple ways, whether it's how you communicate with them throughout the year. Maybe it's, when you deliver that tax return to them, you say, hey, I saw some things on here I think we can do some work on that we can really help you out. And here's how we can help you out and how we can best plan for this. Obviously right now, this is a good time to be proactive with your clients. Particularly if you kind of segment your bases of industry that you're working with and know that, hey, we have a lot of clients that are in retail or, food and beverage or maybe they're salon owners and stuff where it's like, hey, we can't take customers right now. We're really hurting. Now's the time to kind of reach out and say, hey, how can I help you? And we kind of have a couple of these things here on the screen, help them identify kind of like what's the plan to get you through here so that you can live another day once everything gets back to normal. Is one certain way to do that and help them out. Another way to do that is, with all the SBA stuff or, if you're in Canada, I know there's, a bunch of stimulus stuff going through there. I mean, any country you're in right now, the governments are really trying to put things in place to help out small businesses. So how do you navigate them through that? Maybe they're that tax only client who only puts together the books at the end of the year because they need to for tax purposes. But now they're being asked about, okay, what's your payroll information for the last 12 months? What's your income and expenses, January through March? And they don't have that information. Now's a good time to help them. Like, hey, we can get this stuff together so you can apply for those loans, or you can get that, you can get those grants, or we can assess to see what's the best path for you here. And I think in a lot of ways too, there's just a lot of, financial therapy that can put in play here. Your clients are really kind of reeling right now. They, have poured their life and their blood and their sweat and their tears into their business. And, maybe they've been doing all right up this point, and now they see this, event happen, and they don't know how they proceed. They don't know if they should just throw the towel, how they even get through here, because no one's experienced this before, and everyone's kind of freaking out. And so I think it's our job as accountants, as we advise our clients, not to catch the panic, and to get in there and to say, hey, here's how we can actively help you. Here's what you need to do next. Here's the next plan of attack. Here's the next thing you can do to make sure that your business exists in a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now. And this is really that kind of time to get in there and do that. And this is not the time to be, wait and see if your clients show up, or wait until someone comes to you. This is the time to be in there because they're looking for help. And this is not about, hey, I'm going to do this thing for you. You're going to pay me $1,000 to do it. This is you going there and helping out. And in a lot of ways, you're really going to strengthen that relationship with the client. And if there is some payment that needs to happen, that can always happen later or over a period of time. And it's really about you taking your expertise and knowledge and be able to parse things through and helping them out right now.
Some super helpful. And then in terms of, those channels for actually communicating right now, have you guys found maybe is phone calls best? Or are you guys trying to get on Zoom, using a calendar booking? Like, how are you finding the best way to get in front of your clients right now? Obviously, it's probably not in person, but what channels are you finding best of kind of getting your message across? Or maybe you're doing that in bulk as well.
Yeah, so the one thing we did was we set up a Slack account just to deal with everything that's going on with our clients. We invite our clients in the Slack account. We set up channels on, here's what we need to do for paid sick leave, and here's what we need to do with some of the tax changes and SBA loans, and there's been throwing resources and information in there. And I think that's been really good because that's allowed not us to provide answers, but it's provide a forum for people to ask questions. And we see our clients helping our other clients out in there too. Oh yeah, I just did an application. Here's what you need to know before you get in there. And that's been really cool to see that it's not just this like one-way street. It's a whole community of people helping each other out, which is really cool. Another thing that we did in there too was we created office hours where we set up a calendar link in there. And every day I have an hour blocked on my calendar where I can take up to 4 appointments. And anyone can take it at any time. It's up to them when they want to take it or how they want to use it. And they can use this how much little or how much they want, but it's a time for them to directly schedule time on my calendar. We can talk through things, like figure out what the right plan of attack is. And we do all that over video calls because we want to have that face-to-face dialogue and communication. And so I think that is a good way of going about that too. We tried to stay away from email. Everyone's getting a million emails about their company's COVID response. And while your stuff you're going to send out is probably really important, it's going to get lost in the, here's what Best Buy's COVID response is for something you bought 5 years ago, right? Like you need to find a channel where they can actually engage in and actually get the information they need. And so we've purposely stayed out of email and really focused our attention on and creating these two channels so we can have that communication happen.
That's awesome. First time I've heard of that. So that's really cool that you've already set that up, and almost creating a community aspect within your own customer base too, of them kind of helps them solve each other's problems. So that's really great that you're doing that. Kind of shifting a bit in terms of, let's say when it comes time to actually, it all sounds good, the client likes it, but when it comes down to actually, selling it and packaging this into, say, a monthly service, what are kind of your tips for doing that? And I think even perhaps during a cash flow difficult time, how would you go about packaging and actually charging and selling a service?
Yeah.
And how you kind of frame that to the client?
Yeah, so I think there are a number of things, obviously, you're going to do right now to kind of stop the bleeding. but those things are still important after the fact. So helping your client come up with a cash flow forecast right now to kind of figure out what we need to do is good, but it's something that you need to not just do once, you need to do over a period of time. And even when life gets good again and things get back to normal, you still want to be doing cash flow forecasting, because we want to start to set aside cash reserves. We want to kind of start to set aside, okay, what are the best cash decisions we can make right now? So, I think it's a good time to show that you have this expertise. And then that conversation can happen where, maybe a month or two down the road, say, hey, would you like us to continue to do this cash flow forecasting for you? Here's the price. Here's how we can do it. Here's how you can pay for it. We can spread the cost over a couple of months. We can do whatever you want, however we want to set that up. But I think this is kind of a good entryway to kind of show, here's our expertise and here's how we can help you. And maybe there's some of these things that you had tried to sell to your clients in the past where, I know for us, we've, in kind of some of the packages that we have, we've always thrown cash flow forecasting in there. We have had clients that say, I don't really need that. I don't think that's important right now. I got a good handle on cash. And now it's like hair on fire. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so now is a really great time to show that expertise, show that you're here to help and help them out. And then, like I said, when things get back to normal, you can jump in and say, hey, we can do cash flow forecast. And we can do this HR advisory stuff where you help about, figure out how to hire and fire employees and make sure the right policies and things in place, and try to figure out, okay, if someone's going to use paid sick leave, how's that actually going to work? And how do we actually administer some of these programs that we want to put in place? With business continuity, it's how do we, the whole idea behind business continuity is how do we make sure our business exists for the long term, and putting the right policies and procedures in place, and how we communicate with each other within the company, and how we engage everyone. Those are all important things that we can jump in right now and help our clients out with. And then when things start to normalize, we can say, hey, if you want us to continue to do this, we can certainly do that. We're gonna have to charge a price for that, but now we can package that in. This is stuff that can easily be add-ons into, if you're doing monthly accounting work, to add that into that, or monthly bookkeeping work, add that in. And for things that, maybe we're just doing tax return for them, now it's a time to open up and say, how can we help you throughout the year versus just at year end?
I mean, in terms of the cash flow forecasting, let's say a firm isn't, doing that currently. Do you have any recommendations on applications out there, maybe something you're using? And then on the HR advisory side too, say a firm's not really involved in that, some resources for them to actually start providing advice on that.
Yeah, so cash flow forecasting, we use a number of different tools. We use Futurely, we use Fathom, we use Home as kind of our tools. Depending on what client, we may use a different tool over another. But this is a good time if you don't already have a cash flow forecast we're using, to get in there and start utilizing something. Something like Float, for instance, there's a cash flow app that integrates with Xero. They're offering a free extended trial right now. So if you need a tool right now to help your clients, they're a good tool to use, because you're not, one, have to pay anything, and two, you can use that now through the end of May for free, which is really generous of them to do. But that would be, if you're trying to figure out something to utilize, that may be a tool to pick up and use right now. On the HR advisory piece, a lot of this kind of ties in with payroll. So if you're already doing payroll type services, this is a way to kind of extend that further. So if you're using like a Gusto or something like that, Gusto has a lot of great tools beyond just the payroll piece and how you can advise your clients. And that's something that they're really passionate about. And not just, hey, let's run payroll, but how do we create a great HR plan for a company? Particularly a small business isn't going to necessarily have an HR director on staff, or it's the owner trying to do this stuff and maybe they're not doing it well. You can get those policies, procedures, employee handbooks, benefit plans and packages in place, so that now not only does a small business have that and it can really benefit their employees, but now it becomes a really attractive place to work, because they got that stuff in order. And it looks like it's a really professional organization as a result.
Awesome. So I know you've given a ton of really good advice. I've learned a lot even just sitting here and on the webinar today myself. But what are kind of those top tips, key takeaways that you would give to those on the webinar today that are going to hopefully go and kind of action some of this stuff afterwards?
Yeah, so I mean, this webinar is all about cash flow, so my tips are all kind of focused in that realm. First tip, anytime we're trying to advise clients on cash flow, is understand how they're actually spending their money right now. And so that is looking at historical financials, seeing what's their monthly burn, on, payroll and rent and things like that. Those kind of big ticket items that are huge kind of cash expenses. Understand what those are, because if we don't understand what those are, then we can't really advise on how we adjust those. Secondly, we need to understand what their cash flow burn is. So especially in this time period where revenue is down significantly, we want to know, okay, how much cash are they losing on a monthly basis or weekly basis? And understand, okay, well, if they're losing, let's say, $10,000 a month in cash and they only have 20,000 in the bank, we know we're only going to get through 2 months and then we're done. So now we know, okay, well, if this is going to be, we're not going to get back to normal for 3 months or 4 months, we know we may need to get $20,000 or $30,000 in the door now to ensure our survival to get there. So we don't know what that burn is. We wanted to look through our expenses and understand what expenses can be cut. What are things that we can reduce? So maybe we're spending a lot in one area, maybe we can back that down a bit. Maybe there are some expenses where we don't have to pay for them right now. We can extend those payment terms. So maybe it's a supplier that we work with regularly and normally have to pay those on a net 30 and they're gonna give us net 60. Okay, great. Now we can push that cash flow another 30 days out. That can help us in kind of planning this out. Once we've kind of figured out those things, let's forecast out 3 months. Let's get ourselves through the end of June into July and see, okay, where do we end up? What's the cash flow hole that we have here, where we have this big gap that we need to fill. And then once we figure out what that gap is and that dollar amount, then we can figure out what solutions we need to do to get there, whether it's an SBA loan or, getting a line of credit in place or, figuring out some other local or state government stimulus programs that may be able to fill that hole for us. And then once we can do that and feel like, okay, we know we're going to need $50,000, we figure out a way to get that $50,000. As long as we can stick to now our kind of forecast and our budget that we created there, we can get through June and come out, whole on the other side. So, that would be kind of my tips here of, looking to see what you can do now to really kind of help your clients out. And this some doesn't have to take a lot of time, but if you have a good knowledge of your clients, you can really kind of get to this really quickly, figure out what that gap is, and then you can really advise to say, oh yeah, I think that SBA disaster loan is really going to be a good option for you here because it's going to fill that hole for you. Or, hey, you have a lot of payroll in place, and I know you have a lot of people on staff who want to keep on staff. Let's look into that paycheck protection loan and see if we can do that. And maybe that's a way to get us to keep those people on staff, pay the payroll, and not have to cut them loose. So, really kind of, coming up with that nice 3-month cash flow forecast is a great way for us to assess what do we need to do now. And really helps your clients to see as well, where are they actually spending money, and there are going to be things that are like, oh yeah, I can cut back on that, or I don't have to do that daily trip to Five Guys to get my cheeseburger. I can scrap that for right now, and kind of figure out those things, and those things will really help guide your client through these 3 months. But then it's also good practice then going forward, because now we're trying to get really healthy, cash flow positive businesses to exist in the long term, and if we're focusing here, we can do that.
Awesome. Super helpful. So before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to recap. So we mentioned we have Practice Ignition, Relay, and Xero as co-sponsors, but just want to give you a quick kind of recap on all the applications. So in case you didn't know much about them, you can learn a bit more. So in terms of Practice Ignition, we're going to make it really easy for you to kind of package all your services to your clients, sell your services, and ultimately get paid for those services. So the traditional way is you send out Word docs, you take check payments. We'll make it really easy for you to send off digital proposals and collect payments. So that is Practice Ignition. I will try to keep it short because I'm conscious of time. Josh, do you want to talk just quickly about your experiences and why you're a Xero partner?
Yeah, so we've been a Xero partner from day one when we founded our firm 5 years ago. And really the reason why we chose Xero and why we think Xero is really good is one, it's a great app to work with our clients. They can understand what's going on there, and they don't necessarily have to be an accountant to do that. It has really strong integrations. So it has a really great app ecosystem. Things like PI and Relay are things that really integrate well into the software that make those really nice integrations, which saves us time from not having to do manual entry. And then I think the different products within Xero are really strong as well. So If you have a client that needs to use kind of a project-based ledger, they have that within Xero with Xero projects. They have really good invoice and expense bill management in there. So you just have to connect in your different apps, and it works really well. And it's a really great product.
Awesome. And you want to just touch on Relay?
Yep. So we are small business banking made easy. From the advisor's perspective, the things like firms love about Relay is that they actually get their own partner portal. So they can digitally issue bank accounts, invite their clients in, they can manage their staff's access, similar to Xero HQ or any equivalent. You get to enjoy reliable bank feeds. So someone asked in the Q&A, what's the difference between a Relay bank feed and other banks' bank feeds? Ours is API to API, which means we've written software that connects directly into the accounting system. So it's much more reliable. You're not waiting on kind of solutions like Yodlee or Plaid to effectively do what's called web scraping to be able to get the transaction data in. And that's often why bank feeds are unreliable. So the future is API to API, and that's why we built that direct relationship with Xero. So we're one of 15 banks in the US alongside Wells Fargo, Capital One, PayPal, that actually have that integration. And the nice thing is you get enriched data. So the payee actually goes into the payee field. I know, revolutionary, but it kind of is. When a check is deposited or sent out, instead of it coming through as check 1, 2, 3, 4, it comes in with the payee's name. So you can actually reconcile easily without having to chase down checks. I know we have, sworn after this webinar to never use a check again, but in case your client does, know that you will have the data you need by using Relay. And then really, the theme here is empower your clients with financial visibility. And that's really our goal at Relay is by being a bank that's connected into the key systems, we help deliver a better view for small business owners and can get through good times and bad. So we love working with accounting and bookkeeping firms. That's how we built the product is really with folks like yourselves in mind. So sign up. It's free. No monthly fees, no minimum balances. Sign up online inside of 10 minutes. Payments, cards, bank accounts, easy peasy. Go to relayfi.com/partners for more information. Thank you.
Awesome. So I know we had some questions coming into the Q&A and chat. I'd love to spend some time to answer those. So Josh or Yusuf, do you want to just start answering off any of those? And I also am going to just do a quick couple poll questions. Just so we know how to kind of best follow up on this webinar, but maybe if you guys start tackling the Q&A at that same time.
Yeah. I'll start, let's go from the top here maybe. So the first one here is how do you obtain clients? I also run a virtual practice, but I seem unable to add clients. I would say the first thing is figure out kind of, what type of client you want to work with and focus in on them. So don't try to serve everybody, but focus in on one particular type of client. Make sure you have a good web page in place because that's where people are going to search and find you. Make sure you're doing some content marketing, social media, things like that. So yeah, I would say start with those things. Spend some good time, getting kind of your online presence in place and kind of set yourself apart from other accountants who are trying to serve those similar type of clients. Next.
And yes, for those of you who didn't know, I did launch the first poll question. About half of you have answered it. So if you do see that poll launch, go ahead and answer those. We do have 2 more poll questions coming after this. So hopefully get everyone to answer these. So if you do see that poll question, just go ahead and pop it in and answer it out. It should only take a couple seconds to get these done.
Next one here was, have you been recommending layoffs? I think that's a real big it depends here. Just because you have to kind of assess what's going on with your particular client. In some cases, it may make sense. In some cases, it may not make sense. So I would definitely say you kind of have to figure out on a client-by-client basis and not just take a full swing at it and say, oh, you should lay off all your clients across your whole client base or all your employees off your client base, because that may not be the right answer for everybody.
I'm going to transition to the second poll question in a second here. So if you haven't answered that first one, go ahead and just pop your answer in there now. And basically what these polls are intended to just so our teams know how to best follow up. Perhaps you had some more questions that were brought in the applications. Want to make sure we get able to do that.
Yusuf, you are muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Sorry, I have the most creative set of AirPods ever, where I just have to pick them up and magically they connect. I don't even open it. It's quite a magic trick that not sure exactly how that works. Yeah, so there was kind of a couple of questions about the workflow and whether that workflow connects to other accounting alternatives. And yes, certainly that information is available on all of our websites. And I'm sure if you connect with us, we'd be happy to provide more information. We covered, there was one question here, Relay bank feed different than other bank feeds. So I think we talked about that, which is basically ours is API to API. So it's much more reliable. It's connected. It's authenticating using your logins as opposed to relying on web scrapers. And so you don't get any 2FA codes or anything like that. And then you get higher quality data. I'm just going to knock out these Relay ones. Is Relay available in the US and Canada? So we are currently only available in the US. So if you have a US entity, but you're actually a foreign founder, I don't know, in like Belgium or France or Australia, we actually support that use case. So you can sign up online inside of 10 minutes. No need to make the pilgrimage to the US. Easy peasy. And can a company open multiple bank accounts? Yes. Collaboration is the name of the game. So we have a lot of business owners who have multiple entities. We make it easy for them to create multiple entities under one account effectively and switch between them in a straightforward manner. And then the last Relay one I just want to quickly knock off. Can Relay accept clients in the cannabis and hemp industry? I wish we could. We do get asked about this a lot. Unfortunately not. So no folks who sell CBD oil or any products related to it. Unfortunately, that's just federal regulation. I'm sure it'll change over time, but for now, unfortunately, we're unable to support those customers.
Okay, I'll take those two there. Is there a difference between ACH and bill pay? So ACH is just the electronic means of transmitting money between two parties through a bank. So a bill pay system may use ACH to pay something, or you may use a check to pay something, or may use a wire to pay something. So ACH is just the means of transacting there. I don't believe there's no CE offer today. Is that right? So we're
no, there's
CE, none of that today. I'm looking at some of these questions in the chat here. Have not been answered.
We just got another one. I'll just grab it while you're looking through. How often do you have errors or code errors with using the bank feed? Do you run into sync issues? Will there be a delay when the bank has the two-step authorization? So since we are the bank, even if you have two-factor authentication set up, because you're connecting API to API, as opposed to web scrapers, which from the bank's perspective, when you're using a web scraper, which is the traditional way of connecting, it's like a user is logging in. So they prompt the two-factor authentication. In our case, because it's API to API, the two systems connect and talk to each other and don't prompt a second factor of authentication. And you're not really running into the traditional errors that you're running into with kind of traditional bank feeds. I think would be the way of putting it. I hope that answers your question.
The name of the app for cash flow was Xero. It was called Float, F-L-O-A-T. Again, they're offering a free trial of the software through May 31st. So the rates will give that a shot. Plans for QBO working on this model? Yes, I think QBO would work on that model. I think, right?
Yep. I think there was another one for Relay. Does Relay offer approval workflow for bill payments?
We do. That is going live this week.
We did have some issues with the polls, so don't worry, everyone will get a follow-up. So you'll be hearing from us if you did want to get some more information either way.
Cool. All right. I think that was it. Oh my God, it's all over.
All right. So we usually try to keep these to an hour, and I think we're already 4 minutes past, but there was some really good conversation, great questions. Thanks for everyone that was engaged today. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you, Josh, for joining. Josh, especially about a really Great perspective. Yusuf, you did too, but you know, you've got definitely.
I don't take it personally. It's okay.
Okay, it's fine. Cool.
All right.
And thanks to everyone who joined on today. I know there's a lot going on, but we really appreciate it taking an hour to get on today's session. And yes, we'll be sharing that recording and slides.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.